Outputting our coverage. It's what we do.
That's all we do every Thursday
At 5:30. College football.
College football.
Mountain West Conference.
Doesn't matter.
SEC
Is all that matters.
Nick Saban
Is crazy.
Yeah.
And that's all. Let's start the show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in to another exciting yet somewhat delayed edition of Outputting Our Coverage. We've got a surprise for you tonight. This is the night when we start the SEC previews.
It was due. We were going to be doing this anyway, but it just happens to be on the anniversary of our show.
And you know how I know that, David?
Because they took another payment out?
Yes, because we were billed on our credit card today. So we officially know now that it is the 1-year anniversary of the Outputting Our Coverage show.
But we've got to say, Spreaker has been awesome. It's worth the money, definitely.
Yeah, it's been a good platform for us. So we'll talk about one SEC team tonight. Going to get things rolling probably with 2 teams next week. Then we should be back on our schedule of 1 team a week, assuming no catastrophic events occur in our personal lives and or
the world.
The world, yes.
Right.
So, first of all, college football in general. Let's talk about what's been going on. There is no off season in college football, as we all know. There's always something interesting going on. Let's first start with some comments made by the Texas A&M athletic director. I mean, this is the time of year where you got the Tiger Trek, the Crimson Caravan, all these events where the coaches are traveling around talking to alumni, boosters, raising money, basically. It's that time of year. There's not a whole lot else going on.
So a lot of sound bites coming out of
those. A lot of sound bites. I mean, at these things, you get the whooping and hollering kind of comments where you're rallying up the fan base, saying things you wouldn't normally say to a reporter or interview, but
because you don't think it will be repeated.
Right.
In today's day and age, that's naive.
No, I mean, people are on Twitter, they're recording you on Vine now.
Right.
There's reporters of these things too. I went to the Auburn one in Huntsville. All the reporters were there, so it's not like whatever you say is not going to be noticed. The Texas A&M athletic director, did we have a direct quote that we can give here?
We do. We have a direct quote. Talking to boosters earlier, he asked, "What do the Moon and Texas A&M have in common?" The answer, they both control the tide.
That's a little bit of a burn.
That's a burn. I mean, we talked about this a little bit before we went on air. Texas A&M, you think they're getting a little cocky?
I think they might be, a little bit. And looking back to last year when we were kind of doing our previews of Missouri and Texas A&M, I think we both kind of agreed that, a lot of people were kind of questioning whether those teams would have success in the SEC, but we both thought that Texas A&M would be successful.
Right. Now, we didn't think they'd be nearly as successful as they were.
Yeah, not quite that quickly.
Right.
But the common denominator with successful teams in the SEC is money.
Yes.
And Texas A&M has more money than any of the other SEC schools.
And now they have a bigger stadium.
Right. So there's no question, I think, that they're going to be a long-term competitor. They got some good pieces in place. Kevin Sumlin, of course, Johnny Manziel. However, tell the listeners what you told me in relation to the Alabama game before.
I mean, I understand that this was a huge win. It was definitely a big win for Texas A&M coming into the SEC. Big win because it was the eventual national champions and they were number 1. However, they only beat them by 5. Alabama had a shot at the end of the game on the 3-yard line to score and probably win the game. And they were up 21-0 in the first quarter, and they blew the lead. Is that something that you brag about?
Yeah.
And say that you control a team because of that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you look at 2006, Auburn beat Florida, who ended up being the national champion that year.
Right.
And, I don't think you go around saying, oh, man, we're the best team in the SEC because we beat the eventual national champion. I mean, you got to come to play every week.
Right.
That's how it is. And certainly Johnny Manziel, some of the other Texas A&M players are very talented. The things that worry me, Johnny Manziel gotten a lot of public exposure this offseason. Where is his head going to be?
Right.
Where's his maturity level? Personally, I don't think it's quite where it needs to be. The thing that's rolling under the surface, I think a lot of people will tell you that about Johnny Manziel, but one of the key strengths of that team last year was their offensive line.
Right, and they lost a lot.
They lost a lot there. And if, Manziel making those little runs is all good and well, but if there are no blockers to spring him enough to do that, he's not going to be able to get a whole lot done.
No, I just think that this. We'll talk about A&M as we preview them later in the year, but I just think this year sets up. I mean, there's so much hype. There's so much talk about him. This sets up to be truly. I mean, it could get disastrous.
Yeah.
They lose a couple early and they deflate and kind of lose the team. This could really get out of hand.
Yeah, I mean, they're taking, like you said before we got on the air, the Steve Spurrier School of Public Relations.
God, I love Steve Spurrier's quotes.
Spurrier, for most of his career, was able to back those things up.
Right.
It kind of worked for him.
He was cocky, but he was able to bring the pain. So,
but, you look at the opposite, the complete opposite of that. Nick Saban, for all, the underhanded whining that he does sometimes about some of the rules and stuff, he would never come out and say something like this.
Oh, no.
That would not happen.
No,
so, you got to be careful about giving your opponents motivation.
Yeah, Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, they really don't like talking, I think,
right.
at all.
Right.
And so they just try to keep words to a minimum most of the time. But I don't know. I think this is kind of crazy.
Yeah, so we'll see. Definitely a huge game. The Texas A&M Alabama game has already been picked up as the first CBS game of the year.
Yeah, Alabama with a week off to prepare, really early in the season. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. On a side note, interesting side note here, the CBS game will no longer be the only SEC game in that time slot now.
Right. There are going to be multiple games, right?
So that'll be an interesting quirk. ESPN will have some games going on at that time, so maybe not quite as much cachet as there used to be for the CBS game. I don't know.
I don't know.
Personally, I wouldn't be sad to see CBS go entirely.
Right. I agree, especially their broadcasters.
Yeah.
But A&M and Alabama, everybody's tuning in. You won't have to worry about that.
Certainly going to be a good matchup.
But when you have people like Vandy and Georgia maybe on the CBS game, or those weird combinations, don't expect everybody to be tuning in because they have to anymore.
Right. I want to switch gears here a little bit. Let's talk about recruiting. Recruiting never ends now, as we know, nor does college football, really. I don't know how many of you have been following this story, but a 5-star linebacker, one of many 5 stars each year. This guy's name is Matthew Thomas.
His hat is broken in every picture he's in.
Yeah, in this picture he kind of looks a little interesting, but committed to Florida State on signing day, signed the letter of intent, and after that has happened, he reportedly asked Florida State to release him from that letter of intent because he had kind of changed his mind, was thinking more about USC. The coaches of the school you signed with have the right to release you or not, and Jimbo Fisher and the Florida State staff would not agree to do it. And if that's the case, if they don't agree to release him, he automatically has to sit out 1 year in order to transfer to another school. Now he's saying that he's going to stick with Florida State. His quote was, "What happened was," you see what happened was.
Right. Great start. Keep going.
What happened was, on signing day, I wasn't sure who I wanted to sign with. I had issues with different schools. But when I told my mom I didn't want to sign with anybody and wait and give it a few days, she said I couldn't do that. She said, FSU is a good school, pick them, it's close to home. I wasn't agreeing with it, but I felt like I was being disrespectful to her if I didn't sign, so I made her happy.
So I didn't agree with her, but I signed a legal document with my name on it saying I agreed with her.
Right.
Yeah.
The question this brings up, a couple of questions it brings up. Number one, how involved should parents be with recruiting like this? I mean, should the parent ultimately be the one making the decision?
We've had this come up a couple times. You remember back during recruiting when it was hot and heavy, on signing day, a mom ran away with a letter of intent.
It's not unusual. It happens pretty much every year.
It's happened before. So, I don't know. I mean, I think with any college, any high school kid about to go to college, it is between the parents and the kid.
That's true. As an 18-year-old high school kid, you're probably not mature enough to completely make your own decision yet.
I agree with that. But at the same time, if he doesn't want to go to Florida State, you can't. I mean, you shouldn't force him to go to a school he doesn't want to go to.
It should be a team decision.
Agreed.
And, obviously a lot of the top football players come from disadvantaged situations, and they don't really have that strong support staff to help them make that decision. And I think a lot of times there's some really misguided motives.
Yeah, I've got
making these
I
decisions.
got a crazy idea though. He said he wanted to wait a couple more days. How about you make your decision in the upcoming 2 years while you're being recruited?
Yeah.
It's not like this snuck up on
I
him.
mean, there's a lot of time to make the decision.
There's a ton of time.
Right.
It just doesn't make any
the
sense.
other question I have, and the point I've seen raised this week, is what is stopping the cream of the crop football players from just saying, you know what, I'm not really going to sign a national letter of intent. I'm not going to sign the document anymore. I know I'm one of the best. I've got all the cards here. There's no reason for me to sign this document. I know the schools are going to hold a spot for me. What's in it for me?
Don't you have to wait a year if you don't sign a letter of intent to play anywhere?
I'm not sure exactly what the rules are. My thinking is that all you have to do is sign a letter of intent before you actually start the season. I mean, you'd have to start it before. I think you'd have to sign it before you start practicing.
Isn't signing day the last day that you can sign the letter of intent?
I
Or
believe
can you sign
signing
after
day
that?
is the first day you
It's
can
the
sign.
first day.
I don't believe that there's
See, I
actually a
don't-
last day.
This is why I don't keep up with recruiting. It's just the rules are so weird.
It is. It's strange, but you get to this point now, and I would not be surprised to see that happening, where you have these top guys. I mean, we've seen instances where, you remember Terrell Pryor?
Yeah.
He was trying to decide between, I believe it was Ohio State and Penn State, right at the last minute.
And Michigan because
yeah.
Rodriguez just went up there.
That's true. And he actually ended up waiting about 2 or 3 weeks after signing.
I do remember
before
that.
signing.
You're right.
So I think you're going to see a lot more of the top guys doing that, but there's really no reason for them to sign anything even anywhere close to signing day. Just wait until the fall.
Yeah, but
I mean, the schools are going to hold the spot for you, the ones who really want you.
why? I still don't understand why it takes so much time. If you figured out which school you want to go to, you want to get in there as soon as possible because in today's age of football, freshmen make an impact.
It's true.
And so you have a chance. More coaches will put you in the game. Get in there, show them what you can do in workouts, show them what you can do in practices, and get on the field. Just holding out doesn't help anybody, the school or the player.
It teaches you how to be an NFL player, though. If you learn how to hold out earlier in your career, you'll be better off once you get to the NFL.
Yeah, but
That's
this
all those
doesn't
guys
bring
ever
any
do.
money, supposedly.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting question. Like you said, you make a fair point that if you want to play early, you better get there early.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think another point to make is that the thing about signing your letter of intent is at that point, coaches from the other schools are finally going to stop calling you and pestering you.
If you sign your letter of intent,
Yeah.
no.
You're done then. I mean,
No.
you can't go anywhere else
You
without
can-
transferring.
But you can ask them to release you.
Well,
Some
that's
coaches
true.
will do it.
I mean, maybe you're still getting some calls after that point, but I think the bulk of the calls are going to stop.
Did you
at that
see
point.
the recruit, the 2014 recruit who flushed his letter from Alabama down the toilet?
I did see
and it's
that.
in a Vine video out on it?
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of you remember Lake Seastrunk?
No, not at all.
He was a big time running back recruit a few years ago. The same class with Michael Dyer, Marcus Lattimore,
Yeah.
all those guys. And at the Big Cat weekend when they did that at Auburn, they had all the top recruits come in, and I think all three of them were there. Michael Dyer, Lattimore, and Seastrunk were all there. And Seastrunk, somebody captured him on video. There was like a pep rally at Toomer's Corner, and he was saying all this stuff like, "Oh man, Nick Saban, we're gonna beat you so bad," and all this stuff. He never even ended up at Auburn.
Nice.
Went to Oregon, sat on the bench
Never
for a few
played.
years. Now he's at Baylor. He's actually done well at Baylor, but I don't think these recruits realize that sometimes some of these things that they say will end up either at best making them look stupid.
Everything in this world now is digital.
Yeah, you
So-
got to be real careful.
Just every time I open my mouth, even at work, I just assume I'm being recorded.
Yeah. Something these players are going to have to learn somewhere along the way. We're going to take a quick break here. On the other side, David tells me the NHL and NBA playoffs continue to be exciting and worthy of coverage.
Worthy of coverage.
So we are going to make them worthy with some coverage.
So worthy.
On the other side here of outputting our coverage. Welcome back in to outputting our coverage. NHLs, the NBAs, all those sports that apparently everyone I follow on Twitter watches except me.
I've got to say, if you're not watching NHL at this point, then it's just, shame on you.
Yeah, see, I don't know. Let's start with the NBA.
Okay.
The only thing I know about the NBA playoffs right now is that apparently Chris Bosh is a really bad actor.
Yeah, he's terrible. He just got fined $5,000 today for flopping.
I saw that on Twitter. I tried to watch the video and it wouldn't pull up, but I can imagine. He must have been watching some soccer games.
He kind of looks like the Roadrunner anyway.
Yeah.
So it's even that much
He's
more
kind
funny.
of a funny-looking guy.
He's an ostrich, basically.
Yeah.
But NBA playoffs, you've got the Heat and the Spurs, two of the best teams all year, finally matching up. We previewed it a little bit last week. I predicted that the Spurs would win the first game, which they did. They pounced on the Heat to start the game and just kind of rode it out from there. And then the Heat came back and won the second game to tie it up. My prediction was Heat in 6. Right now we're through 4 games and they're tied 2-2. So I think they still could do that. Miami won last night. They won by 10. They had a bigger lead at one point, but the Spurs made a comeback. But the Heat kind of held their own and held in there. So I don't know. I still think the Miami Heat will win in 6. They just now forced it to go back to Miami. The Spurs have looked really good at times. 2 games ago, they set the record for NBA Finals game single game with 17 three-pointers. And that's pretty ridiculous.
It's pretty good.
So,
yeah.
But they just, when they look bad, they look bad. They look old. Tony Parker's a little dinged up. He's got a pulled hamstring. He went back into the locker room in the fourth quarter, so you're not really sure what he's going to do. When he's on the floor, they're a completely different team. Very dynamic, a pretty powerful offense, but when he's not, they can't replace it. They got a bunch of three-point shooters, and that's it. So I still think Miami's got this. Dwayne Wade blew up for 32 points. A lot of people have been wondering where he is in the playoffs, so big game for Wade. I still think the Heat in 6, but we will find out later. They're on a 2-day layoff right now, so NBA still going on. They'll play again on Sunday.
I'm going to mark that on my calendar right now.
You should. All right.
I'm on it.
So that's my pick is the Heat in 6. I want to know your pick, having watched no basketball.
I like old guys.
Right.
So I'm going to go with the Spurs.
If you like old guys, you can't get much older.
I just, I feel like that's what I want to happen. LeBron, Dwayne Wade, all those guys. Ever since I watched that stupid decision thing a few years ago,
right,
I was like, I
bad.
can never like LeBron again. As hard as he tries, this is the most conceited piece of crap I've ever seen in my life. I've always been a Tim Duncan fan.
Who's getting really old.
He's getting really old, but good for them. It kind of reminds me of good old Mr. Winton.
Oh yeah.
Remember he had some quote about age and wisdom will always trump youth and skill or something like that.
Yeah. Although the skill is really good.
It is pretty good. But
and I've got to
Mr.
say,
Winton has never been wrong.
That's not true. He was wrong with that haircut. But anyway, LeBron. You mentioned you hate him. A lot of people are LeBron haters.
I don't hate him.
You said he was the most despicable piece of crap.
No, I said that decision thing
okay, yeah, that was
the
pretty
most
terrible.
Despicable piece. He's not a bad guy.
I've got to say,
but
he gets a bad rap. He's a great competitor, and more than anything, people don't give him credit enough for being such a team player. There were times where Jordan, he can take over a game, but he was also pretty selfish.
That's true.
If Jordan was hot, Jordan's getting the ball, and Jordan's not giving it to anybody else. LeBron lives to dish it to other people. He doesn't want to score 60 points a game. He wants to he's a triple-double threat every night. He wants to get 30 points, 10 assists, 10 boards. So I think LeBron gets a little bit of a bad rap on that. Anyhow, so you want the Spurs, how many games? They're tied at 2 through 4. So it's a best-of-3 series now.
I think it'll probably go to 7 games.
7 games. Spurs in 7. So they're going to win on Miami's home court in Game 7.
Well, I mean, apparently Miami's home court, if things start going bad, the Miami fans are all just going to leave, right?
Yeah, they're not. They're kind of homers.
They got to get out of South Beach.
That's right.
Check out what's happening. I have to go down to Miami next week.
Really?
Yeah, actually West Palm Beach, which is where all the old people who get tired of Miami and tell those people to get off their lawn.
Yeah, it's
have
the
to
best
go.
part of Miami.
But will the finals be over by then? Is it still going to be going on?
I don't
at that
think
point?
so. The game in San Antonio is Sunday, and you'd figure they give them a day to travel. So
Okay, so I may get to deal with some of the heat frenzy. It's going to be
gonna-
crazy. I
it's
might
gonna
be
be
able to
so
give a
awesome.
live report, or not really a live report because we don't have that kind of technology. But
you can
I might-
record it on your phone.
I might be able to give an after-the-fact,
That's gonna be
almost
awesome.
live report.
All right,
of-
you should just go up with your phone and interview people.
Yeah,
Tell them it's going to be on a radio show in Decatur, Alabama.
Yeah, and I'd be like, what do you think of the NBA? What does it mean to you personally in your life? Can you name all 5 starters on the Heat's team?
What kind of tanning products do you use?
Yeah. Do you speak English?
Right.
That was too far.
Anyway, all right.
Sorry.
NHL. Speaking of speaking foreign languages, no Canadian no Canadian teams in the finals. This is actually an original 6 matchup. You got the Bruins and the Blackhawks. Once again, we previewed this a little bit last week. They had Game 1 a couple nights ago. I'm telling you, the NHL is the most exciting thing that has happened this calendar year in sports.
I'll take your word for it. I still haven't watched. I should.
So many overtime games.
Yeah.
It's just drama everywhere you turn. And the first game of the finals was the epitome of that. Triple overtime. The Boston Bruins were up 2-0 at one point with the hottest goalie in the NHL going. And Chicago bounced back, found a way to score 3 goals, and they tied it at 3 going into regulation. And then it was 2 overtimes of just people beating their brains out. There were shots that went off the post. There were shots that jumped in the air and looked like they might go in and fell just short of the goal. The goalkeepers were all over the place. Defenders were checking people into the glass. And then finally, with about 13 minutes gone in the third overtime, Chicago gets a goal, sneaks it by the goalie for a Game 1 victory. Now, if all the games can be like that, would you at least watch an NHL game?
Yeah, I mean, I will try to watch an NHL game this weekend.
Okay, well, Saturday at 8 p.m.
If possible, I will watch one.
Saturday at 8 p.m. There were a lot of tired people in Boston and Chicago on Wednesday night. So
I can imagine.
it was about 1, 2 o'clock before anybody won that one. So
All right, let's take another quick break. Coming back on the other side, we're going to start SEC previews. No, people.
I'm so excited.
People have been waiting for this.
we
for
just
years.
we gave a little pause just to let the raucous uproar kind of die down.
Yeah, I still can't hear. My ears are ringing
Yeah.
right now. We're going to take a break to sort that out. We'll be back on the other side. SEC preview.
It's time for SEC preview. SEC, Big 10, Big 12, 12 can't count. SEC, college football robber barons. SEC, yeah, they're big, they're fast, they're strong. And Missouri and Texas A&M as well. Yeah, SEC preview. Here we go. It's time for
All
SEC.
right, we are back. Here are now putting our coverage. As promised, we are starting the SEC preview extravaganza. Hop on the train, it ain't stopping. So,
Whoop, whoop.
yeah.
That was awesome.
That was a great moment in radio right
Yeah.
there. All right, today... Kentucky.
Yeah.
You knew it was
The
coming.
crowd goes wild.
The crowd's like,
Right.
It happens.
Well,
But
I mean, they've got enough to be excited about.
that is true. There is not the same old Kentucky, even though it kind of is.
Right.
They got a Stoops now.
Who apparently is just lighting the place on fire.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's start with some positives here. Mark Stoops coming in, former defensive coordinator at Florida State, had his name mentioned for a few jobs in the past. Kentucky managed to snag him. He managed to draw almost 51,000 fans to Kentucky's spring game. By far the most Kentucky has ever had for a spring game. More than either Texas or Texas A&M, Georgia, South Carolina, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, or LSU
Wow.
had it theirs.
Well, that's pretty impressive. Although,
good.
do you think it had anything to do with the fact that Kentucky kind of sucked in basketball in the last?
It
I mean,
might.
the fact they didn't make the tournament.
I would also be very surprised if might not have been some kind of basketball-related event.
That's true.
thrown
Maybe they
into
had
this,
basketball at halftime.
I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how the Florida spring game works, but so that's a positive. Another positive for Kentucky, got a pretty good recruiting class, ranked somewhere in the vicinity of number 29 in the country by most of the services. Now, granted,
that's probably number like 17 in the
probably last in the SEC.
Yeah.
So really, it sounds pretty good in theory, but it's all relative with the competition that you've got. But you got a couple of 4-star guys: a defensive end, Jason Hatcher, defensive back, Marcus McWilson, and a JUCO defensive end, Zadarius Smith.
Right.
So 3 4-stars. Not exactly up to SEC level, but it's something to work with. Kentucky kind of getting back to some previous roots, if you will. Back when Hal Mummy was the coach there with the air raid offense.
Oh yeah, definitely.
They've brought a disciple of that back in to be offensive coordinator Neil Brown, a guy that at one point there had been a lot of talk about him kind of coming in possibly as an offensive coordinating successor to Gus Malzahn at Auburn after he left. Kind of
right.
Not exactly the same styles, but certainly like an up-tempo, aired out kind of offense.
Now, they ran it a little bit more while he was at Troy, but still,
Yeah.
you're talking about 70% of the time they're going to be throwing the ball.
Yeah, so that'd be a little bit different. Certainly, they're going to have to find a quarterback to do that, though, David.
Right. Right now, all 5 quarterbacks on their roster are getting equal playing time, both in the spring game and in practices. Can't really figure out who's going to be the leader. The probable starters, as good as anybody's guessed, are probably Smith and Whitlow. Smith can throw, but he's kind of injury prone. Whitlow's more of the running quarterback. They both have their strengths, but neither one's tested. Neither one I would think would be that great if you're looking at quarterbacks.
Yeah, injuries were a big concern for Kentucky last year. Morgan Newton, who's no longer there, was only able to play in about 4 games at quarterback. Then you had Smith come in, and you just, especially if you're young, you at least need some consistency so you can build some experience.
Definitely, and one of the things they could not address, mostly because they're Kentucky, is the depth. They still do not have depth. Speaking of quarterbacks, the wide receiving core, they're going to need. They had 5 recruits at the wide receiver position this year. They're going to need all 5 of them to come in and contribute at some point.
Especially if you want to run an air raid type offense, you better have multiple receiving options.
Exactly. Right now, the number 1 wide receiver, probably DeMarco Robinson. They've got a JUCO coming in, Javes Blue, who could help immediately. But outside of that, do you really feel comfortable in any of these guys coming in and really contributing right away?
And none of them are guys I've heard of. That's
right.
a problem.
And none of the ones from last year really put up huge numbers. So.
But, if you get the right system going, even if you don't have star players, it can still work for you.
That's true.
So,
well, let's talk about probably the biggest weakness with Kentucky, and that's their offensive linemen.
Yep.
They lost the best offensive lineman they've ever had in Larry Warford this past year to the draft. And what else do you have on the line?
Yeah, that's definitely a big concern. We've said it many times on this show. Games in the SEC are won and lost on the lines.
That's right.
The SEC probably home to the best defensive lines in the country by far. Certainly most of the best offensive lines in the country.
I completely agree
in the
with
SEC as well. And once you start playing against the big boys, like I said, they're going to have to make this offense run a very specific way with lots of quick outs, swing passes, screen passes to get around the fact that they are very inexperienced on the offensive line. There's just no way around it. Otherwise, they're going to get manhandled.
I completely agree. On a brighter note, I think they're really going to improve on defense this year.
Yeah.
Stoops is a big defensive coordinator at heart. He's going to really spend time with the secondary. I think they probably have most room for improvement, but like you just got done saying, it all starts on the line.
Yeah, and some of those recruits that they've brought in may help with that. I mean, they're certainly young, but as far as some of the positions go, defensive end, probably one that freshmen may be able to contribute quicker, sooner than others, depending on what kind of weight situation they come in at.
Definitely more than something like a safety where you're asked to play a bunch of different coverages.
Right, or maybe a tackle where you really have to get your weight.
That's true.
Got to build yourself up. Most high school kids aren't going to be able to come in and play defensive tackle. It's just not going to work out that way. So maybe you get at least some pass rushing help there, but really what you need in the SEC is the ability to stop the run. And I'm not sure that's quite there right now.
Well, if they're going to be able to do it, there are three guys I think are going to be at the head of this. You've got Alvin Bud Dupree, who's been pretty much the most solid defensive player that Kentucky's had in the last year or so, playing at one of the ends. And you mentioned the transfer, Zadarius Smith. I think he's probably going to come in and do pretty well. But the third one is probably, I think, the most underappreciated front seven guy in all SEC. Avery Williamson is their middle linebacker. Had 135 tackles last year. Is really solid. He doesn't miss a lot. Now, of course, he doesn't have a whole lot in front of him to help get the offensive lineman off of him. He's got to drop back in a lot of coverages, but I just think really solid tackler, could have a really big year this year for Kentucky.
All right. Special teams, you got at least one weapon. Landon Foster, the punter, one of the better punters in the SEC, so that helps if you're a bad team. At least you can try to get some field position advantage at times.
It helps a lot if you're going to rely on your defense.
Yeah.
If you're just going to play it safe and let your defense go out there and win it, then put your opponent in bad territory.
Yeah. Now, play it safe may be a relative term for an air raid offense.
That's true.
I imagine there may be some interceptions, and that's going to kill your field position game at least.
Definitely. Or 3 and outs hurt just as bad.
Right.
I mean, 30 seconds and you're off the field. That doesn't cut it.
Let's look at the schedule and see if we can. First of all right. Well, let's run through who they got here. Western Kentucky, first game. I think that's winnable. Western Kentucky's a good team.
I think it's winnable, but it's not as winnable maybe as it.
Not a slam dunk.
It's not a guarantee like it might have been in years past.
But winnable for Kentucky is a good thing.
Winnable for Kentucky is a good thing.
So I think that is possible. Miami of Ohio.
They were very good last year, but they lost a lot. So
Yeah.
I would say
winnable. Louisville, not winnable.
No,
they're losing that one. Florida, you're losing there. At South Carolina, you're losing that one.
Right.
Alabama, you're losing that one.
Yeah.
At Mississippi State.
I went back and forth with this one. I think Kentucky, if they can really get something going and stay healthy, have a chance to compete against Mississippi State, but I still ended up putting them down as a loss.
Okay, I think they're going to lose that. Alabama State, I think you win that one.
Right.
Missouri, interesting game to me. I think out of all the SEC games, this is probably their best shot.
Yeah, I think Missouri's a W. They're going to... I don't like Missouri.
I don't think Missouri's a definite W. I think it's a definite toss-up. But I think out of all the SEC chances they've got, it's a winnable.
Right.
You got at Vanderbilt next week.
Not winning that one.
Probably not. Yeah. Probably not winning that one. At Georgia.
Not going to win it.
Tennessee. We don't know about Tennessee yet.
We don't.
Maybe.
I have a feeling this year they're going to stink.
Yeah.
I think I really like the coach. I think in a year or two they're going to be back on their feet, but I think this year they're going to be terrible.
I think they're still better than Kentucky, though.
Okay.
And I think Tennessee still beats Kentucky.
Okay, I've got them winning that one. Right now, I've got them sitting at 5-7, which I think 5 wins to me for Kentucky this year would be a tremendous victory. I think if you can get 5 wins out of that schedule, you should be happy with the direction you're going.
I'm thinking 3-9.
Okay.
I think
that's fair.
I think you beat Missouri, you beat Alabama State, and then you win one of either Western Kentucky or Miami, Ohio.
I would say Miami of Ohio would be a more winnable game.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. We'll see.
3-9. We're writing all this down, and we're going to be doing a lot of good call, bad call at the end of the year. So,
just a lot of question marks remaining for Kentucky. Certainly some positive energy happening there, but the rest of the SEC is just so good right now. It's very difficult to climb back up.
I agree, but I think they got a good coach in. The recruiting trail is good, and there's a lot of positive energy there. I think Kentucky's got a chance to get back on their feet.
So let's talk about Mark Stoops for a second. What's the end game for him? I mean, he's not looking to stay at Kentucky.
Definitely not.
How many games does he have to win to impress people enough to get a bigger job?
I think throw out the overall record completely. If he can win 3 SEC games, if he can win 4 SEC games in a single season and maybe finish second in one of the divisions, he's gone.
You think he has to do that much?
No, to get an elite job.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't even know if he has to do that much to get an elite job.
I don't think you can win 3 SEC games at Kentucky and get an elite job. Do you?
Maybe, I don't know.
Let's look at this year. If he beat Mississippi State, Missouri, and Vandy, Do you think he's getting an elite job?
You're right. Okay. And we got to take into account the fact that the SEC's expanded a little bit now, too. So probably
That's
4
true.
games.
Okay,
Right.
but okay.
With at least one of those beating a major power.
I was about to say, however, if they come out and beat South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Georgia, that's a different. That's a different.
It depends
story.
who it is,
yeah,
for sure. But certainly something to pay attention to there. Mark Stoops not looking to make Kentucky a long-term home, so and there's always the possibility that how much longer do you think Brother Bob sticks around at Oklahoma?
I don't know. There's been a lot of speculation to him going to the NFL. If he was going to go, the best year would have been this year.
Yeah.
For him to jump with Chip Kelly, the guy from Syracuse, I don't remember his name. He's in Buffalo. I'm not going to have to remember his name for too long. So there were a lot of college coaches making the jump. He could have made some money, but I really don't think Bobby's going to the NFL. I think he'll probably just retire.
But if that happened, let's say Bob Stoops leaves,
Okay.
does Oklahoma look at a Mark Stoops to try to come in?
I think they look at him. But,
Yeah. They probably got to go for a bigger name than that, right?
Either a bigger name than that, or they were really in love with their own staff.
Yeah.
I think they'd probably promote from within, maybe an offensive coordinator.
True. Okay. All right, there you have it. We'll be back with 2 more teams next week. We're going to take a quick break. Weird news happening on the other side. You know it, you love it. It'll be here when we come back on Outputting Our Coverage.
I wish you would step back from that ledge, my friend. You could cut ties with all the lies that you've been living in. And if you do not want to see me again, I would understand.
Welcome back to Outputting Our Coverage. Everybody's favorite portion of the show, the weird news, where we talk about number 1, news that is weird, and number 2, more news that is weird.
Right. Well, I've got one that's actually sports related, which we don't get a whole lot in news of the weird. But Carl Peterson, you know who that is?
Carl Peterson.
Yeah, I had no idea who it was either. He's a golfer.
What?
He's
I think I work with a Carl Peterson. That's like a guy that everybody works with.
Right. It's a pretty
yeah,
generic.
call Carl Peterson over in accounting.
Yeah, it's a pretty
talk to
generic
him.
name. But he's playing at the U.S. Open this weekend. Carl Peterson was sitting there just like anybody else at the U.S. Open and about ready to hit his ball. And he goes through his backswing, and all of a sudden, something interesting happened to his ball. We've seen dogs run on the course and grab balls. We've seen birds fly down and grab stuff. No, that's not what happened with this one. During his backswing, another ball came through and knocked his ball away. A ball from one of the other holes came onto his hole and knocked his ball out from under him when he was trying to hit it. That's pretty weird.
I feel like something like that has happened to us when we've played golf before.
At the course we played at, everything has happened to us.
Yeah. This one looks promising. I'm watching a video right now. Apparently, a naked man attacking a woman in the San Francisco transportation thing.
Yeah.
And, okay, that was not the one I was looking for, but the headline here looks promising. Bird collector gets into shootout after threatening cops with toy gun. There's a lot of meat to that headline.
There is.
First of all, we got a bird collector, shootout, toy gun. Those are the 3 words I'd like for us to focus on here, David.
You're going to have to give me more details on this. By the way, you've got to go find this guy on NBCnews.com. He is the Asian version of Elvis with a soul patch.
His name is Rainbow Kilo Rasfumi.
No, it is not.
It's his real name. All right. An Arkansas man with a toy gun got into a real altercation Wednesday with police outside of a Walmart, and cops later found his van held a veritable menagerie of various birds.
How about that?
The bizarre unfolding of events began shortly before 8 a.m., pretty early riser, when police in Springdale, Arkansas, received a call reporting a suspicious vehicle. The caller stated that her uncle, identified as Rainbow Kilo Rasfumi,
Say it again.
Rainbow Kilo Rasfumi,
All right.
often came to her home and bothered her. She also noted that she believed Rasfumi to be mentally ill.
Well, his name is Rasfumi, so...
When police located the vehicle and signaled it to pull over, the suspect stopped in a Walmart parking lot, got out of his van, but refused to cooperate with police after attempting to hit officers with a plastic flute.
It just keeps getting better.
Police tasered Rasfumi.
Which is the appropriate response when somebody tries to hit you with a plastic
Who was
flute.
not disabled by the stun gun. This guy keeps it. The crazies always keep going.
Does he have something to do with Rasputin? You remember that guy was...
Yeah, he was nuts.
Yeah.
Rasfumi then pulled out what police now know was a plastic gun and pointed in the direction of the officers, who then fired 7 real shots at him. None of the bullets hit Rasfumi, who then locked himself in his van. According to Peters, the cop, that is when a SWAT team and negotiators were called to the scene. After pleading with the man for 45 minutes, Rasfumi left his vehicle, was arrested, taken into custody. In the van, officers recovered the toy gun along with 3 parakeets, 3 chickens, and 2 ducks. In the understatement of the century, the policeman says it was a little strange, not something you see every day.
Nice. How much time we got, Andy?
Let's see what we got. We got about 3 minutes left
All right.
on the show here.
I'm trying to make sure this is a good one. UN urges eating insects.
Okay.
8 popular bugs to try. From beetles to butterflies and from ants to stink bugs, people in dozens of countries regularly eat insects. What it does not say is it's because they're poor and have no other choice.
They don't have any other choice. Yeah, that's true.
So this group, the UN, is trying to get more people to eat more bugs.
Is that like the United Nations
Yes.
UN?
Yeah,
Don't they
try-
have bigger problems?
Apparently not. They're trying to solve world hunger, and their solution is by eating insects. Anyway, so that's pretty weird.
Have you ever eaten an insect, David?
Well, I mean, I'm sure when I was a kid, but not while I've been an adult, not intentionally.
I know that my family members, my sister and my brother-in-law, recently decided to eat cicadas.
Why?
I don't know. They did. They said they were good. I'm not sure if I believe them.
That's weird, right?
I think
It's your
weird.
family, so I'm not going to pass judgment. but
I think it's weird.
yeah.
I mean, it's a little unusual. Not many people eating bugs in America.
Yeah, that's pretty weird. All right.
Yeah.
I've got one more for you. I'll take us out on this one.
We got time. Yeah, we got a minute. Let's do it.
This title is No Joke.
No joke. For reals.
Jester wanted at Austrian hotel.
Okay.
Wanted, a jester. Wallflowers need not apply. It's no joke. An Austrian hotel is advertising for a modern-day court fool who is, now check out these requirements, communicative, extroverted, musical, creative, and imaginative. Apparently, jesters have to be all of these things. Applicants are asked to bring and play their musical instrument during the job interview. Also welcome creative costumes. The successful candidate will earn 1,400 euros, which is about $1,900 a month. So,
I'm hopping on a plane.
you want to go try out?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's take this show on the road.
We'd take some awesome costumes.
I think we should just show up and do weird news for them. And they'd be like, this is way funnier than a jester.
Oh, yeah.
Who, I don't know what we were thinking.
I don't know. The hotel director says the idea is to treat guests like royalty, noting that jesters were a luxury that royal families indulged themselves in the 1700s.
I think a lot of people are going to come in and say, that's a little weird.
Yeah.
Not sure I get it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. All right, that's all the time we got. Outputting our coverage this week. We'll be back. More SEC previews next week. More of the craziness that is college football every week. We'll get you up to speed on all of it, as always, here on Outputting Our Coverage. We'll see you then.